Valkyrie Drive is the latest and greatest in perverted weeb trash games where you beat bitches up and their clothes fall off, and I love it, obviously. Valkyrie Drive takes massive influence from Senran Kagura, which is expected as the director is the same, however, it's maybe a bit too similar for its own good. So there will be loads of comparisons to that series here. Without further ado, let's crack on. For a Big Tit Weeb game, the story is okay, I guess. It's quite lengthy, with 56 stages, I think. Roughly, there's about 25 hours to it, providing you don't skip the dialogue. However, don't expect anything too special. On a scale, it's somewhere near the middle, like here. It's hardly Steins Gate level of amazing though, and it's not totally shite. The game and its story takes place at the same time as the anime Valkyrie Drive Mermaid, but at a different island. And if anyone's seen that anime, it wasn't the greatest, but it's had its moments. On the note of the anime, Rinka and Ranka do make cameos in that. Back to the game. The story focuses on the Kagurazaka sisters, Rinka and Ranka. See the Senran Kagura references appearing already? And how they've been sent to Bhikkhuni Island to be cured of the V-virus, a condition they both wish to be rid of. But it's also one that allows them to turn into weapons by engaging in sexual contact with each other.
We've admitted if he had sexual contact with anyone else. She said no. She lied on that question.
You can't make this shit up. When the sisters are on the island, they have to battle with the other students in their class, which are the other 5 playable characters, and also with the teachers that are also known as pillar gods, which are massive fucking robots. Like Senran and most games before it, the story is split into 2 main parts, as well as having side stories. 99% of the story is done before and after missions, with everyone standing around with the other characters talking to each other, which is exactly the same as it is in Senran Kagura. One addition is that there's a director character that appears on a floating screen, and the characters will interact with her, as well as the teachers, like I said earlier, which always appear by themselves because they're so big that they take up the whole fucking screen. The second part of the story is missions or battles, which in this game are a bit more adventure-ish and platformy, with hidden tokens in them for you to collect. When you collect all 3 pieces, you earn a new piece of lingerie. Some stages also have hidden challenge areas. Challenge areas vary, and some of them have cool ideas like your health is constantly depleting, defeat all enemies to regain it, defeat a certain amount of enemies within a certain amount of time, destroy all the statues within like 30 seconds. And finally, there are keepers, which will grope the girl's tits and will transport you to an area where you'll gain a new item. Sometimes you need to replay the stage of a certain girl, or have a character reach a certain rack rank, which we'll get to in a minute. Most stages progress in a typical go-to area, no one there, everyone appears, you defeat enemies, move on to the next section, rinse and repeat, with boss fights at the end of every stage. And stages that don't fit into this are just boss fights right from the start. Boss fights are either against 2 of the other playable characters, well in reality it's only 1 person, but anyway, it's your typical bitch-ass beatdown. But the other type of boss fights are against what are called the pillar gods, or the teachers if you will. These are vastly different, with the reliance on air combat to attack and dodge them. Well, you can hit parts of them from the ground, but it's not very effective. They all have predetermined attacks, and all of them have an attack which makes them temporarily invincible. The last of the 4 pillar gods version of this will ruin players if they're not prepared, and by ruin I mean it traps you in a vortex and then fucks your ass dry. The 4 pillar gods have weak spots covered with armour. You hit the armour off and then there's an area exposed. You attack the weak spot and it gets destroyed. All of these weak spots are on the arms or legs. Destroying these parts doesn't do anything really, it just means you can't attack them again. It would have been cool if destroying a certain part disabled some of the attacks, but alas, it doesn't. The boss fights, while a challenge, and an even extra challenge against the 4 pillar gods. However, the areas every boss fight is in is really fucking boring. They're just blank, flat or mostly flat arenas with nothing in them, other than some barrels for health pickups. It's kind of annoying, as other areas in the game have varied heights, have a mixture of narrow and confined areas, some massive open spaces, and it's just going through all that variety to end up at some of the most fucking boring areas for the climax of the stages. I don't get it. Moving on, without spoiling too much, each character has their charms. and their own progression throughout the story. My favourite progression is the comic relief character Manpokumaru, that's how you pronounce her name, a character that loves food and is quite often baited by other characters into actions with the promise of food. The development she goes through is hard to describe, but I genuinely felt sorry for her after she spills her guts as to why she's the way she is. The other characters sort of feel the same, but she's not too bothered by it, which is a bit weird. Also, the game has one really bitchy character in the form of Viola, who the other day I realised is on the level of Lubu for arrogance. She thinks herself the strongest and begrudgingly accepts help from the others or acknowledges the strength of others. Her character can be summed up like this.
I'm just off, but if you're looking for...
Got it!
I think she's upstairs.
Fuck off, you prick.
Have a fun night!
But she's hot, so all can be forgiven. Viola confirmed for best waifu. The game has 24 chapters, in quotes, with 16 being in the common route known as Drive, the normal ending path, Chaos, and true ending path order, having 4 chapters each. I say chapters in quotes because these right here on the screen aren't chapters according to the game's trophies or achievements. Apparently each chapter is every 4 drives. Another great moment of the story is right at the start there's a very minor plot point that only gets a brief mention, but it's actually a major reason as to why one of the characters behaves in a certain manner throughout the game. It does come up later when the character's realised, but I thought it was quite a neat touch because it's not something you'll remember when they first talk about it. Side stories in the games are accessed from the dining room. The dining room looks familiar, doesn't it? And yeah, it's the options and the general feel of it are exactly the same as the ninja rooms in Shinobi Versus. Here you can talk to your fellow classmates and get their thoughts on what's happening throughout the story. However, if you collect the golden hearts above each of their heads, you increase your romance with them. After you collect a certain amount of romance, you can engage in a character novel with them, which are along the lines of Shinobi Girl's hearts. Well, the start and end of them at least, just a fucking massive wall of text. There's no stages in these, and they're just between 2 characters with 3 per couple, leading to a grand total of 63 of these scenes. I love some of these, they're light-hearted and jokey, like this scene. Weirdly, there's only 3 pictures in these scenes, and they're all for Rinka. No other characters have them, which is weird. Now, my main gripe with the story is weirdly linked to the Liberator and X-Star system, the main system of the game where you play as 2 characters. Now, the reason this is bad for the story is that because every stage requires a boss fight, so you need 2 characters to fight, yeah. That means that there's characters that will change allegiance based on the fact that we need 2 characters to fight. Now, it's only really an issue at the end of the game because at the start it's a plot point where everyone fights everyone for their class exams and for training. Another problem is there's a total of 56 stages, and yet, you only play as Manpokumaru for 1 stage. Just let that sink in. Okay, she's used as an X-Star for more stages, i.e. the secondary character, but just think about that. They reduce the character count to 7 and yet don't utilise them. For the interest of anyone, here's a list of how many times each character is used in the story as a Liberator and X-Star. If you don't want this spoiler, look away now. You can look back now if you like. The base game has 7 characters, Rinka, Ranka, Mana, Momo, Manpokumaru, Viola and Kuharu, and 1 DLC character combo, Mirai and Mamori, who's unplayable, which is straight from the anime of the same series. Compared to most games of late, that is really, really low. Having a roster of this size does have both its pros and cons. The pros are that there's no sort of duplicate personalities for everyone. Everyone has their own character progression and development, like I said earlier, as well as their own reasons for fighting. Another pro being characters have more attention put into them in terms of movesets, which are better thought out, with each of them having very specific playstyles and gimmick. One such gimmick is that Viola, when she reaches final drive, her weapon changes from a normal sword to a whip sword. She keeps her attacks, but they gain massive range and area of effect. The cons are that you get a bit sick of fighting them over and over again. Like I said earlier, they'll change their allegiance when the story needs 2 people for you to fight. I can't help but feel they'd solve this problem by having NPCs, or maybe having the cast increased by about 5 characters. And another cog in this problem is there's no inherently evil characters. Like in Shinobi Versus, the Heavy Joe squad are the bad guys, and the game tells you right out of the gate that they are. However, here characters just chop and change whenever the story needs it. I do say no evil characters, however they're not evil all the time because of this story flaw. If you thought the characters could escape the clutches of the Senran series, there's a bunch of shared voice actors. Ranka shares a voice with Ayami, and interestingly Wang Yuanju from Dynasty Warriors, Momo and Ryobi, Mana and Yumi, Man Pokemaro and Shiki, and Sonoko, who's in the new Senran Kagura as a DLC character. Finally, Viola and Katsuragi, which is weird because Viola's not some ultra advanced level pervert like Kat. One thing I will praise them for is the character Man Pokemaro, not because of her character per se, but they've gone a little, I want to say, edgy with her. She's not your typical beautiful
jizz-hungry tit slut.
She's actually kind of chunky. Okay, she's not fat, but she doesn't fit into the rake-thin archetype expected of Big Tit Weeb games. One disappointing thing about her is, when you initiate Final Drive with her, she doesn't try to eat the other characters. If you know what I mean. Yeah, that is a reference to an early bit in the story. Another thing I like about the characters is that the majority of the weapons they have are different from the weapons in Senran Kagura, with the exception of Rinka, whose base weapon model is the same as Mayabe's, and Ranka, who also uses gauntlets like Yozakura. But Rinka does start off just using her fists. So for those of you that haven't seen for some reason, the weapons are Rinka uses a katana, Ranka fists herself. Just a joke. Drive levels make her use gauntlets. Mana wields a bow and arrow, Momo a spear, Viola with a sword and pistol, later a whip sword. Man Pokemaro has double cleavers, and Koharu uses a rapier. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of variety here. This is probably the most major difference from the Senran games. While it does follow the general hack and slash rule of square for weak attack, triangle for strong attack, there are some new additions to the combat to differentiate itself from the Senran series. Firstly, no blocking. It's replaced with a dodge, which is input sensitive and can't be used mid-animation. What I mean is, if you button mash, you'll struggle to use it. The dodge mechanic only works after your characters finish their current attack animation, so it requires some keen observation and foresight from players not to mess it up. I've now made that sound harder than it actually is, but whatever. When you perform a successful dodge, you get a cool slowdown effect, which is almost the same as latest Sengoku Basara games. In addition, if this happens, you get some free recovery to your synchro gauge, which we'll get to in a second. General combat and moves are like, well, the first One Piece Pirate Warriors, I guess. Like I said earlier, characters start out with weak attacks going into stronger attacks. Some have multiple endings to attack strings, which means not every string finishes with a strong attack. And some characters have charged attacks, which you can power up by holding said button. Each character has completely different move inputs, some of which will be on the screen now. You don't have access to all these moves straight away. The way you unlock moves is done via the drive system, so unlike Senran Kagura where there are 3 separate movesets, which can be mastered by just looking at them, here the game limits you to what moves you can use. The drive system works if you're playing as 2 characters at once, one being the visible playable character, the Liberator, and the other being the weapon at the X-Star. The drive system is also like Shinobi transformations in Senran, where you can transform it into different clothes, regain health, gain access to different moves, and the ability to use special moves. You know, the ones that look like Musou attacks from Dynasty Warriors. Here they're called drive breaks, and each character has access to 3 of them. Much like in Senran, you require energy to do this, like Ninja Scrolls. Here they're called synchro stocks. However, the difference is here that there are 4 levels to transforming with the drive system. Your clothes don't change, but your weapon model does. Each time you perform a drive, you get a cutscene of the girls touching each other, with the X-Star losing more and more clothes with each drive, and becoming more of a weapon, changing the weapon's appearance. One quick annoying thing about this is whenever you drive, it resets the character theme to the start of the song, and some of these themes are absolute bangers, some of which are playing in the background right now. Anyway, because this system is done with levels, it does mean that you can skip them. For example, if you have 2 synchro stocks, you can go straight to second drive and skip first drive completely. Strangely, in Senran and Kagura, when an enemy uses a transformation they regain all their health, but here enemies do not, presumably because fights would last fucking years. Also, using drives in multiplayer doesn't regain health either, so do bear that in mind. Back on topic, you can't use your drive breaks until drive level 2, and you only unlock 1. Drives 3 and 4 unlock the other 2. And like in Senran and Kagura, the extra special moves cost more points, or more synchro stocks as it were. Drive breaks are like Ninpos in Estival Versus and Musous in later Dynasty Warriors games, with a close-up of the character, then zoom out when the attack begins. However, the super drive break goes back to the old school Shinobi Versus way of doing things, with the whole scene playing out before the attack happens. Drive breaks, much like Ninpos in Senran and Kagura, breaks the enemy's clothing, and boy, that's a great feature. Like in Estival Versus, there's 2 clothing break levels and then a final strip, with one distinction here: you can see either 1 or 2 girls at once. To get 2, you do have to let the enemy use a drive though, so bear that in mind. Enemy clothing isn't limited to being broken by drive breaks, but can also be done via combo attacks, or more easily with launcher attacks. So if you've seen one of my gameplay videos and I spam that move, that would be why. Speaking of launchers, another major difference in gameplay is that there is a different focus on aerial combat. In Senran, everyone's triangle attacks launch enemies into the air, and you follow them up automatically by using the dash button. In Valkyrie Drive, it's a little different. Launching enemies has its own dedicated button, and you have to follow up with Phantom, which is this game's replacement to dashing. Phantom is pretty cool. If you've launched an enemy into the air and you pursue them using Phantom, then entraps them, which has a pretty cool effect with chains and shit around it. Remember this because it will be coming back. But what is even better is that enemies can't escape this, which was pretty common in Senran and Kagura Estival Versus. Now there's several options you have when an enemy is in the air. You can carry on attacking them with Phantom Dance and launching them higher and higher in that combo with another move called Phantom Strike. Or you can launch them downward with a Phantom Fall, and finally smash them away with Phantom Blast. Now all these aerial attacks can't hit many enemies at once because of the nature of the attacks. Now you're probably thinking, what's the point in that then? Well, remember how I said there's a cool chain effect when you pursue people? Well, there's a benefit to using this often. You see this nonsense in the top right of the screen? The game never tells you this, but when you entrap an enemy, these yellow orbs come out and it fills the stripy gauge on the side. Now the more this fills up, the more your attack increases, but if you lose your combo, you'll lose the bonus attack strength as well. So there is a benefit to fighting enemies one-on-one in the air. And finally there's Connect. This comes into the game as an ability really late, like near the end unfortunately. Weirdly, you can use it once near the start, but you have to re-unlock it later. Connect can be used at any time as long as you have at least 1 synchro stock. Connect works with the characters becoming one and their appearance changes to a futuristic half-demon thing of the Liberator. Connect blows enemies away and increases attack strength. However, your synchro gauge will constantly decrease and any hits you take will come out of the synchro gauge instead of your health, which is an interesting trade-off. I can't say it's a feature I use all that often, mainly because I forget about it, but it is pretty cool. Like the Senran games that came before it, Valkyrie Drive features online multiplayer, and just like Shinobi Versus being a PS Vita exclusive gone PC port, it's still only 4v4, with bots available in all multiplayer modes if you have no friends. There's 3 modes: Strip Battle, Liberation Battle and Melee Battle, with 3 for all and team variants for all 3 game modes. I should give a warning here because as of recording this there are some issues with online which Marvelous are trying to sort out, so my experience with multiplayer is with bots. #YOLO. Strip Battle and Liberation Battle are nearly the same thing. In Strip Battles you gain points for destroying the enemy's clothing, earning more points. Liberation Battle you gain points by destroying enemies' clothing and defeating them regardless of how, and you lose points by losing clothes. To be honest, I played these several times and I still can't tell the real difference between them. They're both kind of chaotic, but also Really different to single player, obviously, because you're fighting 3 opponents at once, not just 1v1. 1v1 me on Rust, guys. This is all well and dandy, but I have to shit on the map choice. You know how I said that boss fight areas are totally fucking bland? That's the map choice we have here. The multiplayer, really, well, the game in general could have done with some more exciting areas for these fights. But whatever. Finally, Melee Battle is the most interesting and varied mode, with it being basically a watered down version of Super Smash Bros. You gain points in this mode by knocking enemies off the side of the stage. Annoyingly, but also unsurprisingly, there's only one stage for this mode. In this mode, there are some changes to general gameplay. You can't go into Final Drive and only one drive break is available. But it's quite a fun and interesting change of pace for this mode. I enjoyed playing it quite a lot, even if I did win against the bots all the time, but whatever. I should mention everyone uses the DLC character in that online, so you know, don't even bother trying to use anybody else. Aside from the multiplayer mode, unlike the Senran games, this does feature 2 new game modes, Challenge Mode and Survival Mode. Challenge Mode, like it says on the tin, are a selection of challenges based around the mechanics of the game, such as perform 2 Phantom Deludes in succession without getting hit, and juggle an enemy in the air for 30 seconds without losing your combo. The last 2 sets of challenge are against super-powered versions of all 7 of the playable characters and the 4 Pillar Gods. These last challenges are a real test of skill, patience and gauge management. Well, I guess they're called challenges for a reason. Survival mode is also pretty straightforward. There are survival courses of 10 waves, 30 waves, 50 waves, 80 waves and 100 waves. Most of the waves are pretty straightforward, with enemies appearing in the centre of the stage. Every 10th wave you have to fight a random boss. In the first 3 courses is the playable characters, however on the last 2 you have to fight the Pillar Gods. Annoyingly, for these 2 modes you cannot gain experience, but you do earn extra lingerie first time you complete them, and a shit ton of money, so there's always that, I guess.
Yes. 私は特別.
Every pervert's favourite mode makes a return in this game, and surprisingly is needed to get some of the unlockables in this game. You can do the usual molestation and play with their tits and asses and make them rotate like they're attached with string or something, but here you get rewarded for it. The more you stimulate, harass or whatever the girls, it increases the gauge in the top right of the screen, which increases their rack rank. I'm not even making this up either. Which when you reach different rack ranks you unlock cosmetics in the store, like the character's hairstyle, voice and alternate outfit colours. Another feature to add to this is the mini-game, Heart Catch, where the girl of your choice lays in the background while black hearts appear on the screen and will eventually fill all pink, which you have to then collect by touching the PS Vita screen or with your mouse on PC. Collecting the hearts increases the girl's satisfaction and they'll groan. Probably not best to play this within earshot of people.
Don't go in, I'm getting changed.
Are you okay?
It's just a film. It's just a normal film. God, I'm getting changed. Get out.
What film's that then?
やめ.
Oh, right.
Finishing with enough of the girl's satisfaction will reward you with lots of rack rank levels. Every 5 rack rank levels you receive a ticket to play this minigame, or you can just buy the tickets in the in-game store for a fee. Speaking of the store, I suppose now I better talk about costumes. This game lacks them, and in fact hairstyles too. The only outfits that are available to buy are alternate coloured ones of the characters' outfits, and even more disappointingly hairstyles. There's none to buy. You only get the characters' hairstyles after you reach a certain rack rank with them, and those are the only ones available. So you do actually get them for free, and their hair colour too, but the hair colour option is pretty stupid, as 3 of the 7 cast have nearly identical colours. So the base game offers less in terms of customization than any of the Senran games. Well, in fact it's probably one of the lowest I've seen in any game for quite a while. Disappointingly, if you want more actual costumes, then you need to get the DLC, which can be bought separately for the PS Vita version, whereas the Steam version has all the DLC in one big bundle for $10.99. For comparison, 2 bikinis in the Vita version cost $7.99. Right? Fuck Vita players in the ass, yeah? And disappointingly, there's some people that have actually pirated this shit already. Like, $10.99 is fucking cheap for what you get, and you get the character. Wankers. Anyway, if you love lingerie, you're in luck. There's well over 100 different types here. Some of them are just recolors, but others are, let's say, quite interesting, like on the screen now. As well as the mass amounts of lingerie, there's a shitload of accessories if that's what you enjoy. It's not my cup of tea, so I can't really get into too much detail. But it's like in Senran Kagura where you can place accessories anywhere. So if that's what you enjoy, have at it. I really like this game. The combat is far better than Senran Kagura. I know, hang me up like the heathen I am. However, there's still some things that need ironing out, like difficulty. Peons are way too weak, even on hard, while bosses can destroy you without much effort if you're not on your toes, or even slightly underleveled. And to be honest, the lock-on feature is a fucking joke sometimes, switching to what seems just random targets after your current one has died, not the closest ones. So my final thoughts on the game are that I can't recommend this game enough. For the price it is, it's well worth it in my opinion. If you're not too bothered with the lack of costumes in the base game and are patient enough for them to patch out some of the minor or major glitches depending on your rig on the PC version, which, as of recording this, Marvel have made some good progress at. For a Big Tit Weeb Brawler, it's one of the best, and certainly one of the most fun. Thank you for watching my review if you've reached the end. Don't forget to leave a like to support the channel or video. You can follow me on Twitter at S3XGravy. You can add me on PlayStation if you really want at Annihilator V2, all one word. And you can subscribe to my other channel, Superhuman Boob Lover, which we're playing Persona 3 at the moment. If you enjoyed this video, thank you very much. Don't forget to leave a like so you can keep up my morale to keep making ad-free reviews. Next one will be an old school game. I haven't decided yet, but there will be 3 game choices in the comment box below. Thank you very much. Don't forget to vote on that, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.
Jizz hungry tit slut.
There was one really loud applause there, like finally somebody speaking some sense.